Since the very beginning of quantum mechanics, a debate has raged about how to interpret its bizarre predictions. Since the very beginning of quantum mechanics, a debate has raged about how to interpret its bizarre predictions. And at the heart and origin of that debate is the quantum jump or quantum leap, the seemingly miraculous and instantaneous transition Since the very beginning of quantum mechanics, a debate has raged about how to interpret its bizarre predictions. And at the heart and origin of that debate is the quantum jump or quantum leap, the seemingly miraculous and instantaneous transition
Hello, hello. How's it going? This is the test of the vortex. Hope you'll drop in.
Hey guys, this is VR Pill here. You might have noticed on my YouTube channel.
The big question, has the state of Israel made contact with aliens? Well, according to retired Israeli General Professor Hive1 Alive, the answer is yes. Alive served as the head of Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years, and he says that Israel and the US have both been dealing with aliens for years. Now, to clarify, this by no means refers to immigrants. Alive is clarifying the existence of a so-called galactic federation, and the 87-year-old former space security chief told Israel's Ynet News that lots of agreements have been made between the aliens and the US to try and research and understand the fabric of the universe. Well, apparently this has all been kept a secret because humanity isn't ready, and if true, it would coincide with US President Donald Trump's creation of the Space Force as a fifth branch of the US Armed Forces. Apparently, Trump knows about the aliens too. But we have our correspondent Ariel Levin-Waldman joining us to break down the veracity of this report. So first of all, Ariel, give us a breakdown of the most shocking revelations that Israel's former space security chief has made here.
Well, you certainly covered the most shocking ones. The claim made by Professor Hive1 Alive is that we are not alone in the universe, and not only are we not alone, we're not even alone on our own planet. The claim is that we have been visited by extraterrestrial life who have set up a joint base of operations with the United States on Mars, buried beneath the surface. He also claims that astronauts from the United States have been to Mars and are working alongside the extraterrestrials at this Mars base. This, in addition to the claims of a galactic federation, which, interestingly enough, echoes statements made in 2005 by former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer about visits by extraterrestrials to Earth as well. Very shocking statements, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
Right. Well, you mentioned he comes with a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. I mean, Eshed has a serious background. This is a serious guy. Should we be taking his revelations seriously?
In the absence of such extraordinary proof, it's very difficult to take any of these claims seriously, at least not at its face value. One of the things you have to look at is just the laws of physics making things very difficult given the sheer size of space and the lack of any evidence that would directly implicate aliens in any contact with the United States or any nation on Earth. NASA's SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has been for decades scanning stars for any evidence at all, even distant radio signals, and has turned up very little things. With that in mind, it can't be ruled out as a direct impossibility. After all, in the past decade, upwards of 4,000 exoplanets have been discovered, and within 1,000 light years, 20 of them quite capable of sustaining life. With that in mind, even though the laws of biology and the laws of physics are the same everywhere, the chances of having any extraterrestrial visitor come here are extraordinarily low, given the sheer distances in space. Remember, 1,000 light years is much longer for anything traveling below the speed of light, and given that that is pretty much a hard-coded limit in the laws of the universe, anything coming from those distances is virtually impossible.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has pushed for the creation of the Space Force as the fifth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. I mean, why is he doing this, and what can you tell us about this?
So it's much more likely that President Trump's pushing of the U.S. Space Force has much to do with peer-level enemy technological threats to the United States than the existence of extraterrestrial life or the visitation thereof. Over the past few years, we've seen China reveal multiple space-based weapon systems for taking out opponent satellites, and that would be United States satellites. Russia has also unveiled similar space-based capabilities. The United States and anybody else in the modern world recognizes that satellites are more or less a linchpin of any modern civilization or modern military force. If you take out satellites, you take out GPS, and suddenly all of your ground and air forces are blind, deaf, and dumb, unable to communicate with one another or figure out any positions in the field. Likewise, in the same past few years, we've seen Russia and China develop and test hypersonic missiles. All of these are platforms that require space-based interventions to develop, to detect, and to interact with, and it's because of this you've seen the United States start putting more resources into this program. It's very telling that the segments of this new Space Force are the ones dedicated to missile counteraction and missile technologies rather than anything to do with the Pentagon's UFO programs.
Well, why do you think that Israel's former space security chief is revealing this information now, speaking out about this?
That's really anyone's guess. He said because at this point, the climate in the world has changed to the point where people are accepting that. Certainly, we've seen over the past decade, conspiracy theories about aliens start to go mainstream. Just last year, you had 1 million people online say that they went to storm Area 51 to find out about the aliens, and we also saw a declassification earlier this year by the Pentagon of UFO files. All these things together create the atmosphere that perhaps we're not alone, and that in and of itself will allow anybody that deals with UFO things on a regular basis to come out and say, well, this is the time to throw your hat in the ring. Now, whether or not you can take this at face value, despite how high-ranking he is, goes back to the previous statement. In the absence of extraordinary evidence, it's very difficult to believe an extraordinary claim.
I don't know. There's some relationship, but I don't think it's known. I mean, there are people working on that. I don't think it's known why that is or what's going on. And certainly, there's not. If they know, they're not talking about it. A lot of it's probably classified, about the Banner syndrome. But there are similarities. Absolutely, there are.
Yeah, it's strange. So I'm working on Turkey UFO. I guess that was back in 2007, 2009. Roger Lear, I was watching interviews with Roger Lear. He did, I think he said 16 implant removals, etc. He said he was in Turkey. Watched this, watched the video where there were these supposed occupants in the craft. Do you remember Turkey UFO? Was it?
Yeah, I think so. That was the one sort of shaped like this, and then you could see a being there or something. I do remember it. I didn't look into it because I think it was what year was it?
It was 3. So it was the summer of 2007, 8, and 9.
I do remember the video. I didn't know what to make of it.
It didn't make much press or didn't get a lot of attention, I guess, in the U.S. circles. Ufology is kind of my impression. But yeah, that's the case I'm working on now. I'll probably go hopefully to Turkey this spring to try and continue. Yeah, it should be fun. Because I just started this in the summer, like I mentioned. So it's good to talk with seasoned experts in the field, such as yourself.
I wish I could tell you something about the video, but I remember it. I just don't remember. I think I was busy with a lot of stuff, and I just thought, is this so strange looking? I don't know. Who knows? But who knows what's going on there? But it just didn't look like your typical UFO video. That doesn't mean it's not legitimate, of course.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. I feel like a lot of people don't know about it, at least in the U.S. It just seems like it didn't get much publicity, or not many eyes looked at it. It was kind of skipped over because I made a video about it a couple months ago, and I was surprised actually the level of interest I got again. So I'm still working on that one.
That's really cool. It's really cool to focus in on one thing like that. I hope you learn more about it.
That's what I was forced. Yeah, I was going in too many angles, and then people just said, "What about this, Chris? You're supposed to be talking about that." I was like, "Oh yeah." So that was good. So focusing on Turkey UFO. Your surviving death book. So did you find any parallels with the phenomenon?
Oh my! I mean, that is such a big question that I'm just starting to learn more about. I mean, there are paranormal effects that UFOs have on people, which are similar to, for instance, near-death experiences that people have. Where they where they will go into the afterlife realm when they're basically dead and the brain isn't supposed to work, and then they'll come back and remember everything that happened. And sometimes after those experiences, people have psychic abilities that they didn't have before. They have clairvoyant abilities. They experience telepathy. They have precognitive dreams, and the same thing can happen to people who see a UFO or get close to a UFO or have some kind of encounter with a UFO. They develop these paranormal abilities that they didn't have before. So that's just a very simplistic way of illustrating one possible connection, that there's some kind of dimension or even a state of consciousness that people have that is similar in both scenarios. You know, yeah, and I don't know what that's about, but it's something to do with human consciousness and how our consciousness interacts with these phenomena, how we interact with, you know, leaving our bodies, for instance, and going somewhere else, and then, or how we react with consciousness when we encounter something that's this interdimensional or something from another world or from some other plane of existence, which is a UFO. I mean, I don't think that you can pinpoint UFOs as just something physical anymore. You know, that's sort of how I've changed in my perspective. They're not just physical, and so I think that consciousness is impacted in the same way by UFOs and through some of these other experiences that deal with, you know, things that happen to people close to death or related to that. So I mean, I don't know how to put it all together, but there's something really intriguing about that. And I know there are people who know a lot more about that connection than I do. There are people who have been really trying to study that connection. I know Whitley Strieber is one person who's done that, who's really focused on that connection. He in some of the letters, you know, he wrote his book Communion in the 1980s. Many of the letters he got from people describing their experiences involved seeing deceased people when they were having a UFO experience, which he took note of at the time. Like, why are they seeing deceased people in a UFO, you know, in a close encounter experience? There's some kind of overlap. And so I think that's sort of a new frontier that a lot of people are interested in kind of understanding better. I certainly am. And there are people that understand it better than I do. But what is that all about? You know, it's pretty interesting to see if there is, and what role does human consciousness play in all of this? Just the way we perceive things and how we're affected by things. You know, and all of that has to be looked at. And so that's, I'm really interested in trying to understand all of that better.
That is interesting. I was talking to another YouTuber, Artisan Tony. I've worked with him a little bit. He's a contract guy, lives in Tennessee, character. But he mentioned that when he was 10, I got him to talk on online about his experience. When he was around 10 years old, he came into contact with a blue orb. He says an orb. He couldn't move, and he wasn't afraid of it, which was terrifying to him actually later because he wasn't afraid.
Right.
So,
So many people have said that too. That they're amazed they weren't afraid. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it was like they had a cutoff switch or something. He said they had some off switch on him. And what he says, kind of what you just related there, is that it seems like it was now he can pick up on other things. Like it was affected his receive capability or transmit capability or something in his brain. So he mentioned, yeah, there's something different. Whereas he thinks coming into contact with these things can physically change somehow, affect how your brain actually works.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Gary, other people are studying too. There are scientists who are looking at the brains of people who have had these experiences and seeing if there are qualities in the human brain that correspond to people who have these experiences that other people don't have. And there's, you know, really interesting data around that. So that's another area of investigation, is like, can you actually see something in the brain, you know, that's changed or that's unique to people who have experiences like this. So all these, yeah, so interesting. Yeah, it's really, really mysterious.
And so why don't they show us? You know, if the UAP is here, why hide? Do you feel like the phenomenon is hiding from us, or is this just how it is?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to project like intention or purpose onto it because I have no idea. I mean, it's obviously not landing and saying, here we are, you know, giving us something to really, really, really get a close look at. But whether it's intentionally doing that, I have no way of knowing, or if it's just doing its thing. I mean, we don't even know what this thing is, right? So it's hard to know very much about what's going on with its behavior. So I don't know. I just tend to not want to speculate about it.
Yeah. Just find the evidence. Go for it.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really matter what I think they're doing or not doing. It's like,
yes.
I mean, yeah. Obviously, I mean, if there's some, you know, what intrigues me is there is an intelligence behind these things. Obviously.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that's what I'm.
There's an intelligence there. It's been demonstrated many, many times. And so, what is that? Where is it coming from? What's the source of that intelligence? Is there something? You know, there's obviously something controlling, like let's say the Tic Tac. You know, controlling its behavior. Is that something inside it or outside of it? Or and you know, what is its intention in kind of having this cat and mouse thing where it's going around with Dave Fravor? You know, meeting him, and going to his cap point, showing up. I mean. It's the intelligence that's so intriguing.
How else would you define intelligence? So when you see something and you say that's intelligence, you know, what is it? You know?
Well, and what I mean by that is it's responsive. You know, it's not just operating in some independent mechanical way where it's just going around in circles or something. It's actually responsive and interactive with jets, with Navy jets, with pilots, or you know, as was demonstrated with Dave Fravor and has been demonstrated with other cases. I mean,
so an intelligence. I guess it doesn't mean it's a high intelligence. You know, it could be a lower intelligence. I guess. You know,
it's just, you know, when something's responding to you and taking actions according to what you're doing in that moment. That's what I call intelligence. I mean, maybe that's not the right word, but you know, so many military officials, so many officials have said over the years they operate as if they are under intelligent control.
Intelligent control. Yeah.
So something is controlling them to the extent that these things can, in the moment, be responsive and interactive. You know.
So it's not just a weird projection. Yeah.
No, they're relating to the stimuli around them and responding to that. And so they're more than just some kind of purely mechanical drone or something. There's somebody in charge of it, right? Or some force. Something that is able to allow it to be responsive. I mean, we don't know how that works or what it is. But I think the word intelligence is the one that generally people have used.
I mean, you know, if you get two magnets of the same, you know, and it repels, you know, you're still affecting it. But it could be something we don't understand, I guess. That would be the only.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many cases, like in the case of the Peruvian case, which the pilot wrote a chapter about that case in my book in 1980. And he was like, you know, he'd go up, and then the UFO would go up and stop right at the same level he was at. And then he'd go up again, and the thing would go again, stop right next to him. I mean, that's responsive behavior. That object was aware of what this pilot was doing, and it was acting accordingly. So that's what I'm talking about when I say intelligence or intelligent control. I mean, I don't know what the word to use.
Yeah, I don't either. I just was curious on your thought on what does intelligence, you know, mean, or how do you identify it? In the same, like I had the same thought, when Dave Fravor, when he descends down to try and see the tic tac, and then the tic tac comes up to him, that
Right.
obviously it's maneuvering in response to him.
Exactly. And I think that's happened in many cases. Many cases. I mean, in the General Jafari's case from Iran in
That was another cool one.
1976. I mean, he also wrote a chapter. It's just so cool to hear these guys tell their own stories. But there was some huge object up there that was actually sending projectiles out. They were heading right for his plane. So that's some kind of intelligence, right?
Yes.
And then his equipment would go out. He was trying to shoot a missile at these objects, these little things, because he felt he had to defend himself. And he would lock onto the object. And then when it got to be a certain distance from him or closeness to him, all his equipment would go out, and he couldn't fire his missile. And then once it moved away, so there again, we talked about them impacting the electrical equipment in planes. And we don't know if that's intentional on the part of the objects or if it's just that they're emanating some kind of radiation that just does that automatically. I mean, Jafari's interpretation was he felt like it was intentional to him, but there's no way to know. The same thing with the shutting down of the nukes. I mean, people like to say, oh, they're giving us a message that we shouldn't be involved in nuclear war by shutting down our nukes. I mean, I think that's a leap that we can't make. I think that it's conceivable that that object just had some emanation or some kind of radiation associated with it, or force field that had that effect on the nukes. I mean, it seems somewhat unlikely to me because it was so specific to the nukes. I don't know, but there's no way to know what is intention and what is just happening because of the nature of the object itself, But but if you have a huge, gigantic, triangular, brilliantly lit strobe thing that's sitting there in the sky, firing out projectiles towards you, I think you could call that intelligence, right? It's not sort of automatically happening. So that's the kind of thing that I find. Anyway, what is the force behind it all that's able to be responsive like that? And that's the biggest. I mean, that's what everybody wants to know, obviously.
Yeah, I'm excited for the James Webb Space Telescope that should be coming online here in a few months.
Yeah,
that may tell us something at least about the outer universe.
Totally. And then I think there's other countries too that are probing space that may be more forthcoming if they do see some anomalies than maybe our government would be. But yeah, and I think the work of the Galileo project is also going to be really interesting. I mean, it's so interesting that this Harvard astronomer who was pretty much a debunker about UFOs, or was completely scornful of them, has now come around to wanting to try to capture data himself on UAP because he gets it.
Yeah,
it just shows
Avi Loeb,
Avi Loeb. I mean, the power of our government legitimizing this has a huge impact on it. And the scientific community are sort of the last ones to come around. But I think with his leadership, I mean, he's really been a force, Avi Loeb, of mobilization for science, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, he came on. He was my first interview, actually, and very inspiring. Very inspiring.
Was that back when his book came out, before he had kind of opened up to UFOs, or was it?
No, this was in August. So after the
after he founded Galileo, probably.
Yep, it was right after the Galileo project came out, and so I interviewed him about that.
Yeah, he's really a force out there.
Yeah, he goes on all podcasts. I was really happy to have him on, and yeah, he was amazing, very inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. I've had some communications with him, and he's just playing a really important role in all of this. So
yeah, I hope it's great though. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's another project that we have to look forward to for next year and the years to follow.
Yeah, there's so many projects. I'm so excited for 2022.
Right. We can forget about COVID and focus on how wonderful all this stuff is.
Yes, hopefully. Hopefully COVID will end. We'll find out the truth this year.
Or we'll find out more anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And then this is, I guess, my own personal question on book writing. Just I know it's not really on topic of UAPs, but it was interesting. That book you mentioned, you had 18 different people put it together. But how do you go about editing your books? What is your process, I guess, as a fellow author or aspiring author in my case? I
mean, I do a first draft, which is just like spewing out. Not even thinking about the writing, just getting the ideas down. And then for me, writing is really about editing. I mean, the craft of writing is about going over and over and over it. But it's the hardest part is getting that first draft out. And then you just have to craft the writing, and that's just a very long process. And I find that you have to walk away from it for a little bit of time and come back fresh. It's a long process, and they're just constant drafts that I do to refine the writing, and I might bring more material in or whatever. But then, because I publish with Random House, I also have an editor that's given to me by the publisher. So I do a lot of it myself to get it to the best level I can. But I love having the input from outside editors, and also showing it to colleagues and getting feedback and things like that. Because what happens as a writer is you become so familiar with what you're doing that you lose perspective on it. That's another problem for any writer. It's like you're just too familiar, and to have outside eyes look at something, it's really, really valuable. I would highly encourage that when you get it to a certain point, and you'll get feedback that's really helpful, because then somebody's reading it who isn't you, and so that's like your person who you're writing it for, and you want to know what their reaction is, and you're not going to see everything yourself. It's just impossible to see it all yourself. I mean, every writer needs a good editor. That's a lot of people don't like that, but I do. I really benefit a lot and value the input of editors. So,
do you write every day, or do you write a few hours every day, or do you write all in one big? How do you work?
Depends on what kind of deadline I'm on. I mean, when I'm writing a book, I would probably write every day. When I was writing Surviving Death, I'm trying to remember, or I'd be thinking about it every day, or there might be some days where I would just be doing research or something and not writing. But you have to take little breaks from it, or it becomes too familiar. You have to step away and then read it as if you didn't write it, as if it's just something completely new that you have to just read it with this kind of fresh mind, and you're going to see things that you couldn't see if you just stayed with it every single day. So stepping away is really important.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Yeah,
I think people think that it's really easy to write well, but it's not. Writing is a craft. It's a work. You don't just sit down and write a book. No. It's this long process that there's a lot that goes into if you're trying to write something really well. I mean, for some people, they just want to get their information out, and that's okay too. But the art of writing is not easy. It's really not. I mean, every sentence gets scrutinized, and you got to worry about things like word repetitions and the flow, the way it feels, the rhythm of the writing, the flow of the words. It's just there's a lot that goes into it, at least for me. And,
100%,
I need time, even when I'm writing just an article. I mean, I might spend a week with it just fiddling with the language, and it might just be here and there, but it can really end up making a huge difference in the long run. It's that sort of fine tuning of how you're expressing it, and that I feel to be so important. If I feel rushed to write something, I don't have the time to do that. I'm not going to be happy. That's if I'm writing on my own. When I'm writing with colleagues like the New York Times, it's very different, because the Times does all the editing, and they do a lot of editing. So we don't have to worry as much about our craft of writing so much. It has to be the style of the New York Times, but there's heavy duty editing coming from the outside, and that
Yeah.
you know, I don't have as much control over it. But
Who came up with the name for glowing auras and black money? Do
you know,
remember?
I don't even know, but it sure was not us. It
Yeah,
was
wasn't
not
it?
us. We turn in the story and we get it back with a headline.
Yes.
And the print headline was different. Print headline was much better. I think I have a copy of it. Oh, the print headline is right here. Are UFOs real? Secret Pentagon unit tried to know.
Hmm.
Now, I like that headline much better than the one that was online. So, but there are people at the Times whose sole job is to write headlines for stories. That's
Okay.
that's all they do. And the writers have no control over it. Zero. So that's all I can say about the headline. Yeah, I mean, the print edition, I guess I don't have the first page here. Yeah, it's right behind me. Real UFOs, question mark.
Cool.
Pentagon unit tried to know. I mean, I have it here on my wall. I don't know if you can see it, but
Cool. I'll find a better image of it.
I just like that headline better than the one on the line. But so I don't know. They maybe were trying to sort of say something really catchy that would attract a lot of attention. Yeah, the journalists have no say in headlines at the New York Times, unfortunately.
I guess what I've learned the most from this talk is it seems like the evidence is already there. You know, it seems like all of these cases already exist. I guess I was most surprised looking at reading your book was how much evidence there is.
It's stunning, right?
Yeah.
It's stunning, and it's taken how long to get our government to officially acknowledge that? It's just, but it's a loaded topic. So, you know, but it's really stunning. I mean, that's the point I was at too when I read that book. I was just, because I spent 10 years on this stuff. It was just incredible to me how much evidence there was. There's no way that all these cases could be explained away, and even if it's only a few of them, that's enough.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. One case should be enough. You know.
Exactly. I mean, Stan Freeman always used to say that. It only takes one UFO to be. So we've had. I mean, and you go back to the 50s and 60s when the same observations were made, and there was no way that any country had this technology then, and the behavior of the objects hasn't changed. We just have more data on it now. But these things were reported back during the Cold War, right, when nobody had the technology that these objects were demonstrating. It's just impossible. And so, you know, if you look back in history, it makes the argument even stronger that these are not from Earth.
Yeah, because it stays the same. You know, in the 50s we had radar contacts, we chased them with fighters, we had visual observers, photographs, and today we have the same thing. You know, we have radar contacts.
It's more sophisticated today. I'm sure we have a lot more. I mean, I know we do. I know that the Pentagon is sitting on all kinds of spectacular photos and videos and radar and all kinds of data. I mean, Lou Elizondo has informed us that there's one video that's 23 minutes long, and it has multiple craft in it, maneuvering in ways that are just stunning. That it's kind of definitive, that video. And yet we're not allowed. Humanity is not allowed to have access to that.
Yeah,
For whatever reason, and that's not right. I mean, if there are national security elements to it, like they don't want to reveal certain data that's on the screen or something, there's ways of removing that or just showing part of the video. But you know, it's not a concern of these people to try to make any of this available to the public. I mean, most of them their job is to protect information from our adversaries, and that's what they're trying to do. So they just have a different mindset. But there's data.
Yeah.
You're right. There is so much evidence and information, and we don't even know a lot of it because it's classified.
Yes.
It's way more than what we think or than what we're aware of.
That's what you hear, but then they don't release anything. You know, I mean, there was nothing after this. There was the 3 videos that you saw back in 2017, right?
Yeah.
And since then, it's been nothing.
No more visuals. I mean, the stuff that leaked out through Jeremy Corbell has come out.
Yes, that was excellent.
And there were some photographs that I remember George Knapp put out that I actually had been sitting on for a few years because I wasn't supposed to release them. But, you know, nothing compared to what I know that they do have from sources I've spoken to. I mean, the quality of what they have is just way higher than what we've seen. And these things are sitting there in the vault, and there are people that want them to come out, so maybe they will.
Yeah, I don't see why they don't, you know. Well, I mean, yeah, I see why, but they should release it.
They should. I mean, their argument is that they don't want our adversaries to be aware of what we know because there's all this competition because everybody's trying to figure out how the technology works. So they probably don't want to give our adversaries any clues about that technology any more than they already have. So that's, you know, and that's the mentality at the Department of Defense. And
Yes.
I sort of understand it, but I'm not fighting for that position. I'm fighting for the opposite position. Not that I don't respect their position, but I think there is more that could come out in a way that would not be a danger to national security just because humanity has a right to this, as far as I see it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, my experience in the military, you know, I was there 20 years plus, is they're just overly conservative with classified information. You know, they overclassify everything, and then no one will say, yeah, we can release that. No one, you know, I met so many people will be like, look, you know, I'm going to cover this number up, you know, whatever, I'm going to cover this classified section up. So there's nothing classified on the image, and they would not sign off on it, you know. And they say, I'm not going to jail. You know, I'm not going to jail. I'm like, you're not going to go to jail, you know. But
well, if it's officially declassified, nobody goes to jail. You only go to jail if you release something that's classified that you're not supposed to release.
the problem is no one will officially declassify.
I know. Well, I mean, it's
They're the people, yeah.
a process you have to go through. But what's interesting is a lot of the stuff that was at ATIP was never classified in the first place. I mean, those 3 videos were not classified.
The 3 Navy videos, or
yeah, they were not classified originally. There was a process they had to go to get approval for them to be publicly released, which they went through, and I have the document, and I think it may have been released by now. But I had all this stuff back in 2017, the document that showed the approval by the Department of Defense and listed those 3 videos, which was another reason we knew they were legitimate at the time. We just weren't going to release our documents, but they weren't classified. They were just cleared for public release, and they were unclassified. And there are probably other videos in there that are unclassified. I mean, I'm sure the best ones, you know, who knows? But you're right. The tendency is to just automatically classify as much as possible.
Yes.
And then once it's classified, it's hard. Even though there's a process to declassify it, it's a bureaucracy, and it's harder to do that. It's harder to get it released than it would be if it wasn't classified in the first place. So it is. It's the mentality of the agencies that control this information is just keep everything classified. I mean, it's the same thing at the 3-letter agencies and everywhere. You know,
there's no incentive for them to release. You know,
exactly, because their goal is not to please the public. That's not what they're about. So they think of themselves as protecting whatever, or investigating, protecting the public, and so it's just a different mentality. And then you have the few lone people in those worlds who maybe leave, or even those inside who do want it to come out, but they're not the majority. I don't think.
Hopefully that's changing. I mean, if they're directed to, maybe they'll have to.
I think that when you get members of Congress on this,
Yes.
demanding information, that's a huge change. That's a huge game changer. Exactly. That's very different from the New York Times or a public, you know, citizens group demanding information. You know, you have members of Congress; they have to deliver. So that's what the real game changer. That's why this legislation is so important.
It's funny too, because nothing on the phenomena side changed. You know, we didn't really get any more evidence than we had, right? We've had tons of evidence. It sounds like in the past. What's changed is us, or our side. Your methods seem to have been the most effective, if that makes sense.
Well, at least in getting the ball rolling, it was effective.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I think our elected officials have really been the people that have moved the ball down. I mean, if Congress had never gotten involved, I don't think we would have made that much progress. I mean, they're the ones that took the ball and got the briefings, and they were confronted with having to deal with this classified information. I mean, you can only imagine. I mean, we wrote a story in July 2020 for the Times, the last one that Ralph Blumenthal and I did together, about physical materials, crash retrievals, and members of Congress being briefed on that. I mean, that's got to change their perspective. There's so much that they've been told that we don't know about. So having them take charge is really what's important, and that's why things are moving forward, as I see it. So, and I think public pressure is really important too. I mean, the DoD acknowledging that the videos were real, and the Navy changing its reporting guidelines, and all these things that have happened are partly, of course, due to public pressure. But I mean, that will continue, I'm sure. But we scored. We got a victory here by getting members of Congress involved in this, to the extent that they have set up this office now that has a specific mandate to do the things we want done.
Yes, the exact thing.
It's a question of how much of that the public is going to be shown and how much of it is going to remain classified. I mean, that's going to be the challenge, because there'll be both unclassified reports and classified reports. And I think that the members of Congress who represent the people, hopefully, will want as much of it to come out as possible.
Yeah,
But
it seems like. I mean, I've been very impressed actually by the Congress members. Yeah, the ones you mentioned, Heinlein, again, he also had a good quote on it. So it seems like
Heinrich,
Heinrich, yes.
yeah. I mean, I think Gillibrand, she's been amazing.
Yes.
And she's a senator from New York, which is my state, so I'm proud of that. And Rubio, and we have this conservative Republican and this Democrat who have kind of spearheaded this thing. It's just fantastic. So
Yeah, it is.
I think Gillibrand is probably more oriented towards public exposure maybe than Rubio is. I don't know, but I think we're going to move more and more. And we have people like Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo working behind the scenes who care deeply about this information coming out. And we cannot underestimate the role that they've played in all of this. I mean, they've made it happen, basically. They've had tremendous influence on the members of Congress who have taken steps to make these things happen. So they're just absolutely phenomenal what they've been able to accomplish, and we should all recognize that.
Yeah, they have been amazing. Lou Elizondo, starting with Harry Reid, we lost him recently.
Right.
It's really changed my perspective. When you were talking earlier about surviving death, the conscious, basically seeing deceased people. Up until this last year, I was just a devout atheist, essentially. I believe none of that stuff. And now it seems like it's possible. Now I'm like, it's changed my view. Like, it's literally changed my paradigm, which is very interesting. Very interesting.
And you can be an atheist and still understand that maybe consciousness survives. It's not about believing in a God.
Yeah.
So atheism, I think of that as, well, you don't believe in God. You don't have to believe in God. You just have to look at cases and things that have happened and studies that have been done to think that, well, maybe when the physical body dies, there's some part of us, some element of our consciousness that will continue on. And that's the question. But it doesn't require any belief system in any particular religion. It has nothing to do with religion or even beliefs, really. It's just a matter of looking at what's happened and looking at the data and deciding how you're going to interpret it. And it's also interesting because these are things that people can choose to have experiences with, which you cannot do with UFOs. You can't decide, I'm going to see one, right? But with this material about consciousness, you can do things like go to a medium, and try to contact somebody who's died, or have various experiences that will show you directly. And, or if you lose somebody, you might get signs, things that you think are messages from them. And I wrote about those things in my book as well, because some of these things happened to me personally, and I actually took the risk of including that in my book. So it's about evidence, it's about research, but it's also about what happened to me when I had these experiences. And it changes your worldview when you can have the experiences yourself. And I think that's one thing that's so wonderful, is you can choose to do that, with various elements of this consciousness work, this consciousness realm, in a way that you can't do with UFOs. So.
That's interesting. Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna read this your book.
Well, I'm happy to talk to you about it when you read it.
Yeah, that would be cool. I guess, but you have to put your eye up to the telescope. You have to be remotely open to the idea. I think. I think that's why the UFOs have never hit. You could get no traction at all back in 2000, because people would not even consider it. They wouldn't even look. Like Galileo, they wouldn't put their eye up to the telescope at all.
You're right.
And I wouldn't have, before this year, I wouldn't have tried to do any of them, or even considered it. Or meditating, or these medium investigations, or I wouldn't have even considered it. It would have been. I wouldn't have looked. I just wouldn't have even put my eye.
Which means you wouldn't read the book, basically. I mean, the people who are totally not interested are just not going to read it.
Yeah.
The people that do read it, they're not going to be able to walk away from this book and say there's nothing to any of this. You just can't possibly do that if you read the book.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I watched another interview where you talk more about it. The fast gamma speeds of the brain. Have you heard that argument? I don't know.
I don't think that. I mean, I know. I'm not sure I have.
It was basically when there's different brain wavelengths. You go alpha, delta, theta. I guess there's a fast gamma. It's very fast, about 80 hertz. And supposedly when you're dying, when you're physically dying, your brain will go to that hertz level.
Oh yeah.
And so the idea is when you don't die, so you come back from death, you've kind of transitioned to that other dimension or whatever. And now you're coming back. So that's maybe you can bring back those whatever those experiences. And then this Alexei Novitsky is the one that told me about it. He said this relates to DMT as well, like the drug DMT. They say, and again, it's all like anecdotal, I haven't really investigated yet. It also puts you in a fast gamma state. So when people talk about these weird DMT trips, they're talking to like elves or gnomes or something. They report it to talking to beings.
Right. And I wonder. I mean, sometimes they might see UFOs too.
I don't know.
I mean, when people take ayahuasca, sometimes they'll encounter UFOs, which is, again, that's another example of the role of consciousness in all of this, another mysterious element, and is there some kind of interconnection between the realm of consciousness and UFOs and even beings that people might associate with aliens or whatever? They cross over into these different realms that have to do with consciousness. And yeah, I don't know what that means, but yeah, it's all fascinating. That's all I can say. But it's all fascinating to me. I mean, the consciousness questions to me are just as interesting as the UFO question. And I think most interesting is trying to learn more about the relationship between them.
So maybe it is not naive, but I have this hope, I guess, that this topic particularly has the potential to kind of unify humanity, maybe to where we think more of ourselves as one or as our own team, or cooperate together instead of just slaughtering each other.
I mean, I actually wrote about that in the introduction to Surviving Death, because I have that same hope, and I hold out that same possibility, even though it may be a little naive or idealistic or simplistic. I don't know, but I did write about it. I do think it could have that potential. Both UFOs and consciousness studies, I think, it could unify people more. I mean, I agree with you. I hope it can have that effect. I don't know if it will, but it's a wonderful thing to hold that vision and to make that be part of the motivation for doing this work, Yeah, because we're all, it puts us more in a cosmic perspective as opposed to an individual perspective, especially if we realize that we're not alone in the universe and there's other dimensions of reality and there's all this stuff going on. That's, the whole materialist paradigm is going to have to change. And that's going to affect how we interpret who we are, right? Which affects how we relate to each other and how we see each other. So that's what makes it a real paradigm shift. And I hope that one of the outcomes of that is perhaps a sense of greater unity of ourselves as one planet, as opposed to, like you said. So that's a good thing to hope for, right?
Yeah, world peace. That would be amazing. I don't know. But
I
anyway,
don't know if I've that, but maybe people will have more of an understanding of their connection to each other, and their sameness, their underlying consciousness that's something bigger than just our physical bodies, that we all are part of the same realm of consciousness, or something like that. I live with that. I feel that. So it just changes your perspective. And
it brought the thought of the book, editing a book. You mentioned, maybe we'll realize we're not just all on our own. You get other feedback, from outside, and then maybe that'll get us out of our own head,
Yeah, it's a good metaphor.
Better idea, a bigger picture. Yeah, like you said, there's enough resources and money in the world. There's enough evidence. We just need to go and look at it. I think it's kind of how it works.
And try to put it all together. That's the challenge. How does it all interrelate to each other? And that's a fascinating challenge. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Leslie. Thanks for all your time.
It was great talking with you, Chris. Thank you for your work you're doing. You have a fantastic podcast, and I encourage you to keep going. And I'm glad you've come on board with us.
No, thanks. No, I'm glad I've been accepted. Hopefully in the UFO community. But yeah, thanks for all the work you've done. Thanks for the book, excellent book, the UFOs, and thanks to all. It sounds like Surviving Death is also a great book. I'm sure it is. So, thank you, Leslie. And
thanks, Chris. It was great speaking with you. Take care.
Okay, take care. Special thanks to Leslie Kane. She was so awesome to work with. Obviously, a true professional, and she's out there today grinding. Expect to see that video, whatever series she's working on right now, for a major television network. And I'm so excited for that. Excited to read Surviving Death. Excited to read all your comments. I'm very excited for 2022. So keeps me motivated. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. As always, have a great day. Peace.
Imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces, that can fly at 13,000 miles an hour, that it can evade radar, and that can fly through air and water and possibly space, and oh, by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet still can defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what we're seeing.
What? So, yeah, that was on 60 Minutes, which is just unbelievable. So I saw these videos, these 3 FLIR videos that came out, the IR ones, and I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, just, we missed the pandemic, whatever, all this stuff. I just kind of looked at it and I was like, yeah, it's probably just something weird, some weird water humidity thing happening over there or something. But then I watched the Lex Fridman podcast with Lieutenant Commander David Fravor, and it's 3.5 hours, a super long podcast, which is unbelievable. And he just goes into exquisite detail on the tic-tac encounter. So I recommend watching that, honestly, in its entirety. I don't know, for me it was very interesting because I was a fighter pilot for 18 years, just retired last year, and I don't know David Fravor personally, but I know him essentially. Went to Top Gun school. He was commander. And just from the 3.5 hour interview, he is what he says he is, actually. So his words and the language he uses, I understand immediately. Like when he's talking about where he's looking, what he's seeing, the equipment he's using is very similar. So for me, I know exactly what he's looking at, what he's looking for. I have not quite 2,000 hours. I didn't get to 2,000 hours. A little lazy, I guess. 1,850 hours in the F-16, which is a slightly different aircraft. But the Lightning AT is what we use. That is the targeting pod. So in this video, I'm going to go through the FLIR videos and analyze them from a fighter pilot perspective and give you my take, and then what I think of this kind of crazy stuff going on. We're going to be in for a wild ride. Like I said, I didn't think it'd be this crazy, but this decade's going to be pretty crazy. So here we go. Let's get it going. On the 60 Minutes show, they show this video, which looks like about 2004 technology. It's basically the first Lightning pod. It's not as good nearly as the next one that we'll see. So here, I think they're directed out there. So I'll go through basically this kind of targeting pod, first one, and then I'll explain kind of some videos what the targeting pod actually is, and then I'll go through the other two, and so it'll make a little bit more sense. So kind of just going around quickly. Okay, so this is the flight path marker. So the plane is straight and level. Okay, so when this turns, that's how you know that you're in a turn. So you maintain your spatial orientation. So this is your target markers. Okay, which looks kind of weird. The symbology in the targeting pod that they see in the jet is a little different because the software is written for F-18s made by Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Boeing. So F-16 made by Lockheed Martin. So of course they have to have different technology, right? Different software. So the symbology is a little bit different and the capability is a little different, but the actual internal capability of the pod is not. Okay. So what we see right here, the important things is it's in infrared, and right here it's white hot. You see down there it says WHT. If I get it right here, WHT, that means white. So white is hot. It's in black and white. So it's in the infrared spectrum actually. So the anything that's white will be hot in this case. Anything that's not as hot as that temperature, okay, will be black. So if something is the same temperature as its surroundings, you won't see it, right? It'll be effectively invisible. And that happens twice a day during thermal crossover because the sun, right, heats up the buildings heat differently from the ground, and then when they change temperature, you actually get what's called a thermal crossover, so it makes it difficult for targeting pod. I digress. So here we go. So here's your flight path marker. And another key point, we're in infrared, and this is the SA dot, situational awareness dot. And what it shows me, okay, it's kind of a weird thing, but it shows that the targeting pod is looking straight out in front of the aircraft, and slightly high, okay? But basically it's straight out in front, okay? And the other key thing that we don't get here is any range, okay? Normally you get range from radar. So we noticed before that they said radar evading, he says in a later video. And what I see here is there's no range indication, so which normally would be from a radar. So especially this close I would expect radar. So question is, what's it made out of? What's the material? Normally stuff reflects back radar energy, okay? But maybe they have radars turned off. I don't know. Maybe they have some weird rules of engagement. But anyway, we have no ranging information. Let's watch through a little bit more. Okay, they're at 20,000 feet. This bee is some terrible distraction. Okay, so you see it's still it's white hot here. Still right on in front. So he went to a narrow field of view. He zoomed in. Okay, so now he went to TV mode. Okay, this is television optical. Okay, so depending what time of day it was, I'm not really sure. If it's at night, you're not going to be able to see it. So TV optical, this tells me that this was during the day, right? Unless this thing lights up. So if the thing lights up on its own, then you'll see it would be, if it was flashing, if like there were lights on it, I would see flashing lights, you know, like going off. So I don't think it has any lights flashing or anything. So my guess is it's during the day. So the pilot should see this thing because it doesn't look like it's that far away. So he zoomed back out, okay. So another question I had is a laser. Okay, this tells you if the laser's firing. So the targeting pod has a laser. We'll go through in a little bit. It actually can blind you inside of 13 miles in the combat setting, so it's pretty strong. Normally we go into the training laser, but in none of these videos do I get any indications that we're shooting lasers at them, which I'm curious. Did we shoot lasers at them? That'd be one of my questions. And did they do anything? Did it like just bounce off? Because when we shoot lasers at targets, shoot a laser at it, do you get the laser ranging, and will it shoot back and maybe attack? I don't know. So questionable. Curious what they did. What do these leaders do? Everyone, it's so funny. Right? People are like, why didn't the leaders do anything? Why didn't they do this and that? But like, they're still normal people. Like, if someone came to you and told you this, one of your employees in the refrigerator found an alien thing, but it's gone. Would you believe them? And they took pictures of it. So I don't know. I think they just it's easy to disregard if you're human. Expect IR. Okay, and I believe this is the Mach 0.55. So they're not going fast. They're actually going slow. But then that end part, look at that. So 0.55 Mach is slow, man. For so F-16 at that altitude, we're basically going pretty slow. So right behind it, that's only like 260 knots, maybe 20,000 feet. I was never good at that math. So he's basically kind of just falling behind this thing, just falling behind it, just videoing it. I just wonder what he's thinking. I mean, I wonder what this pilot had to say. Sorry, pilot, if I get you in trouble. But hey, if you want to be on the show, pilot, and you can, then it'd be great to have you. This end part is so sweet. Watch this. Boom. What is that? A normal plane can't do that, right? But a normal plane, right? You see it from the back. You're gonna see the wings go like this, and then he's gonna use air. He's gonna use airflow over the wings. Bernoulli's principle. Okay, so we like push really fast and float through the air. Okay, these things do not seem to be doing that. Watch this. Okay, unless there's a cut there, but I don't think there is. I think he just zooms in because it seemed like the thing was like zooming away. So he sees an MFDB IR mode. Goes to narrow field mode. Narrow. So that's just like a zoom in. Okay, and this thing just goes that way. Wow, that's crazy. Like stuff doesn't move like that in the air. This one is later. Okay, I don't think we know actually when this one is, but I believe it's up the East Coast. This is the gimbal video. The first one was called the FLIR video. Okay, so this is the newer one. Okay, this is the newer targeting pod. And I'll just talk through this and then we'll look through what this targeting pod looks like so you can kind of understand. Okay, so here you have a flight path marker, right? And now this is the plane. You imagine you're looking at the plane from behind. So the horizon's like that, okay, because you stay, right when you turn a plane, you stay, and the world actually moves. All right, before we go to this video, okay, let's show you what the targeting pod is. Yeah. You can see through the cloud. Okay, I haven't seen the color imagery before. Okay, so I want to show you here. So the more advanced ones now, so you can see heat differences like this. Okay, so if someone's like, smoking a cigarette or something, you see it very clearly. So you can tell, right? Tires are going to be hot, right? This part of the ground is hot because that's where all the cars go, right? And then this is a cooler. So this is one of the 25 air forces have these pods. So interesting to see if other countries have seen it. So this is a lighting pod, okay? So it has these several components. Okay, it hangs on the side of the jet. But here I want to point out, like, you can see the propulsion here, right? The exhaust from the jet engine is much hotter. So we can see propulsion from the heat signatures here. This is a F-16. It's actually an F-18 in the videos. But basically it hangs on the side, I believe on the left side for an F-18. Just play more video games. And basically it shoots down, and it does have very strong laser, like I said, can blind. It's for using for ranging. Okay, you can get accurate ranging, and you can also laser designate targets. So that is the laser shooting here. So I just want to show basically that same FLIR video. It's a different aircraft again. It is a F-15. What regular aircraft look like. I want to say basically you can see how they move. Okay, so watch it. So the movement is there, and then you see the momentum change, right? And it changes, and now they go the other direction. You can see obvious that the heat is coming from the jet engine, right, in the back. You can see the propulsion, and then they're just going that direction. Okay, so let's get on to the gimbal one. This one's awesome and so good. So it's 25,000 feet, just kind of following this thing around, not very fast, 0.58 Mach, they're going like 250 knots up at 25,000 feet, so not very fast, okay? And this thing's off their left side, so 54 degrees left and 2 degrees and minus 2 degrees. It's white hot, so this thing is white, okay? And you'll see they go to black hot, so you can swap it, at least in the Viper, it's just like a little team's right, and then it swaps to black hot, but you'll see that they do, okay? The 238, yeah, just play the airspeed, yep. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. That's just insane. The ASA is I would say it's like they always have 3-letter acronyms, right? So it's probably aerial situational awareness, like display or something like that. We call them HSDs, horizontal situational display. And basically that gives all your radar information, okay, or data link information. So it tells you where everything is. And they said there's a whole fleet of them, okay. My gosh, they're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Cool, they do. So that's where they swapped. You see, now they went to black. So yeah, they're going 242 knots. And now just look. Okay, so that is detailed. Okay, so you can clearly see that. But it is the heat signature. Okay, so. You can see just like the jet, it looks like there's like heat coming out of here, but you can't really tell. Okay, from here sometimes, like if I'm looking at a jet engine, you get like these weird effects. So can't tell. This does look weird, like the white around it is like, it's like there's cold around it or something. Okay, but the propulsion is here, right? Which is weird because it's going this direction. Okay, this is its velocity vector this way because they're basically going around a circle. Okay, so this thing is like it looks to me. Okay, it looks to me like a disc, and it's got like something coming out of the bottom, like a point, and then a circle, and it's not rotating like a aircraft because it doesn't need aerodynamic surfaces. So it's just going like this, right? And the other plane, the fighter here, is basically just following it around, basically like this, but it's just going like level. Watch it. It's just flying level that way, and it looks like a flying saucer. It's just thing at the bottom, and there's a circle here, and now it's just rotating. Like it just doesn't matter. Questions? All right, go to the next one. Okay, this is the go fast video, and biggest difference on this video is we get ranging. Okay, actually, it's kind of a different video. Okay, so the intercept is basically they're up again, so 25,000 feet, going pretty slow, and 254 knots. So this isn't doing fighting airspeed. Okay, they're just like kind of moseying up to it. But 25,000 feet, and it looks like it's going kind of fast, the opposite direction. Okay, so it's going across the water pretty low, and they're up high, like coming from your direction, and they're just looking down at this thing. And it's off their left side now, like this. Okay, so they're basically looking down. So 4.2 miles of range. It does trigonometry, so it knows where that is in the point in space. Because I don't see any other laser ranging. Right, if they were firing the laser, you would see this flashing the L there, and I don't think they have a radar lock. Okay, otherwise they would get other ranging. But they should be seeing this thing clearly with their eyeballs, looking up the left side of their canopy and down over the water. So they should be able to clearly see it. And it's cold. I wonder what color it was. And I wish they went to TV mode. I bet they did. This is just the videos that they got released. You wonder how many of these things they've recorded or not even talked about. Okay, so again, you're in black height. It just means it's hotter than the surroundings. Okay, the water could still be cold, but it means it's warmer than this. Its temperature differential is what it shows. So that was enough. We have this. Okay, the U.S. Navy photographed and filmed spherical shaped UFOs and advanced transmedium vehicles, and they said that this is authentic. Okay, so let's watch this thing. Okay, so this is a FLIR, right, for an advanced, I believe it's for their gun or missile system. So this sees like inbound coming like airplanes and missiles and shoots them out of the sky. So it's good at picking up heat. And I believe it may actually be raining is what it kind of seems like to me. You feel the boat. So this is out in the middle of the ocean. Okay, just out in the sea somewhere. I'll show you where. And you can feel the boat moving, okay? And it looks like there's some other ones.
Yeah, we have a 31 knots of steam outside, just 40.
It goes into the water. I mean, they say this is authentic. Like, what can do this with no, there's not jets shooting out of here. Like, there's not water shooting up, and how did it get there? Look how it gets there, right? Look at that. It's like more community, man. You can see like the coordinates. That's what I talked about. So when we go and look, all right, it's it's all over this, all over the news. Here's the coordinates. Tijuana. The aliens are going partying in Tijuana. So it's just out here. I don't know. I hope they're like helping fish or something. This is essential for the Catalina Island, man. There's like great whites and weird orbs. Okay. You guys remember that movie Explorers? I'm gonna go watch it on Netflix. Basically, these kids make this anti-gravity device. Looks a lot like those things. It's pretty awesome. It's Ethan Hawke. Thank you, Ethan Hawke. So I'm not gonna lie, guys. I was a little rattled. I kind of saw the videos before, but I didn't think it was real. And now I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of blown me away. I mean, if you can see them with radar, so if you're reflecting radar energy, because they did pick them up on radar, you can see them with your eyes. You can see them with infrared. Then it's there. If something's there, I've just always been a cynic. Never believed anything. Seeing this now, it's pretty wild. So what do I think they are? I'm gonna think about it, and I'll tell you next video. Thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, please subscribe. Really need trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Otherwise, can't get monetized on YouTube. So please like and subscribe. Share with your friends. This is some crazy stuff, everybody. You're gonna see some crazy news coming out of Washington in the next few months. Okay, in for a wild ride. I think they're generally peaceful, from what I can tell. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace.
30 years ago today, KLAS aired a live interview with an anonymous man who made some really astonishing claims. He alleged that the U.S. military was secretly studying alien technology out in the Nevada desert near a base that is now very well known all over the world, Area 51.
A lot has changed in the decades since Bob Lazar first told this wild story. The Pentagon recently admitted that it really has been secretly studying UFOs and then it wanted to figure out and duplicate that technology.
George Knapp looks back at that 1989 interview that started a whole new conversation.
Totally impossible. The propulsion system is a gravity propulsion system. The power source is an antimatter reactor. This technology does not exist at all.
The claim sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. Months later, when his identity was revealed, Bob Lazar said he worked at a secret facility near Groom Lake, where alien technology was being reverse engineered, that is, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. This is the simple drawing he made at the time.
And I had access and was permitted to view and look at the operation of this main level with the gravity amplifiers and the level below.
The premise seems less preposterous now. In a new documentary about Lazar, he describes in detail the spacecraft he worked on 30 years ago.
The craft that I worked on, that when it's going to travel a long distance, that is how it operates. It flies along and it puts its belly to the target and then brings
all the amplifiers to power and it shoots off in that direction. It doesn't fly as it would in the science fiction movies. It flies with the belly, the bottom forward.
If the description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, take a look at the so-called gimbal UFO, a video released by the Pentagon in 2017. Naval pilots encountered a fleet of these unknown craft off the coast of Florida in 2015 and have since had dozens of similar encounters. The spike in UFO incidents prompted a recent policy change by the Navy, which announced it wants to encourage its pilots to report future incidents. Pentagon officials reluctantly admitted to the New York Times 17 months ago that the military has secretly studied UFO incidents, in part so it might figure out the technology.
In the gimbal video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration. So we have a craft without rotors, without heat signatures, without plumes, without tail fins, and certainly no tail number, moving in a way that is counterintuitive to our own aeronautics. When Bob saw that, he came to the conclusion this has to be a gravity-propelled craft, that it does mimic exactly the propulsion system that Bob Lazar described.
The story is extraordinary. Jeremy Corbell directed the Lazar documentary, but he also broke the story about another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. The Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Aces commander Dave Fravor, has said he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth, that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. When Lazar was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the sport model, his name for the craft stashed in the desert.
There's no question in my mind. I mean, I'm virtually certain that's the way the craft operated, and that uses close to or the exact same propulsion system.
Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told us one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. Lazar made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. Now the Pentagon is on the same page.
Where the study of UFOs did not end in 1969 with Project Blue Book. In fact, that was a lie, and it is now an admitted lie by our own Pentagon. We are living in a world where it is understood that there are craft technologically advanced from unknown origin that are performing maneuvers that far exceed anything of human technology. This has been going on a long time, and our government has been studying it.
George Knapp, 8 News Now. As always, we have posted additional links and resources connected to this story on our website, including news reports from our archives.
All right, guys, this footage is about a year old. It's very interesting footage. With this here, you're actually going to see what could be similar to a TikTok UFO. I'm not sure, but this is very quick. Basically, some guys were out in Utah shooting some scenery for a documentary, and they captured this object flying. Now, right now, it's going to play in its entirety, and then I will slow it down and try to zoom in on a little bit just to show this to you guys. But it's going to come up in just a second. You're going to miss it if you blink. So I don't know if you caught that, but it zoomed by really quick. It was like right at about 41 seconds into this video. So if we slow this down some, you guys are going to see this come by. Let it play for a second, and there it is right there. That's fast. I'm going to play it one more time so you guys can see this. I'm going to leave a link below in the description to the original footage so you guys can watch the footage from the very beginning and to the very end. And then also, there's also an interview, too, that the guys did where they talked a bit more about this. But there, this is there. I have no idea what that is. I think some people have analyzed this video to see if it was CGI or somebody edited and put it in, and they haven't found evidence of that happening. And someone even said it was a bug. If a bug flies that fast and is that big, it's going to be crazy. And I believe they said this went about 3 to 3.5 miles in a few seconds. But in their kind of interview with the people that actually took this, they actually talked about it. But just seeing this right here, I don't know. You guys have been really good with the comments. I've been reading you guys' comments on a lot of this stuff, on some of the Lazar stuff and other things. So I'm interested in you guys' comments on this, because some of you guys are actually scientists, physicists, and beyond what I would know. But I'm curious of you guys' thoughts on what this possibly could be, how this could possibly reach this kind of speed and stuff from there. Look at that, the way it just flew through there. And if you were just walking outside, you would probably never see this. So we're going to zoom in just a little bit here, and you guys can see it slow-mo coming through there, and bam, it's gone. I mean, no conventional craft that I know we have can do that and fly like that. And I don't know the exact size of this either. But like I said, I am going to leave a link below in the description. Be sure to check that out, to the original footage of this. And then also they have an interview too, where they, like I mentioned before, they're talking to the people that were actually filming this. And they didn't know. They were just going through the footage and they actually saw this. So this is very, 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 very interesting. For the remainder of this video, I'm just going to let it play through a couple times. You guys can get a better look at this. You're going to see some slow-mo images coming through like that. But anyway, guys, put your comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more comments. And then here we go with this last one right here. You guys see this coming through here? Bam. And they said it traveled 3.5 miles. So that's very, very interesting. So you guys stay tuned for more videos. Put your comments down below. Thanks for watching.
The vast expanse of Nevada's Badlands stretches endlessly to the horizon. Hidden within these mountain strongholds are some of America's deepest and darkest secrets. Secret aircraft and the other legends of Area 51. Among these sandstone canyons today, there's a new glimmer of truth. Shrouded in mystery, it's a story that demands to be told. These are the witnesses of one of America's most unusual UFO encounters in history. Navy veterans and a band of brothers that want you to know that what they witnessed is real. This is their story. Petty Officer Jason Turner served aboard the USS Princeton in 2004. His personal conviction for democracy and patriotism guides him in his search for the truth.
This is an actual event that happened, and I witnessed it.
Aviation tech Patrick Hughes, a USS Nimitz veteran, he speaks for his shipmates, who choose to remain silent.
I'm one of those who have to see to believe, and obviously I've seen the evidence of this, so it exists.
Top Gun Air Intercept Controller Kevin Day and Fire Controlman Gary Voorhees, both from the Princeton, served together in the ship's Combat Information Center. They saw them first. Whatever it is, they are.
They wanted to show themselves, whatever they were. I don't think they wanted anything really to do with us.
They were literally breaking the laws of physics in my eyes.
These sailors are here for truth and vindication, and their story goes back over a decade to a time and place that marked a departure for all of them, both in their Navy careers, but also in their knowledge of the limits of man's technological understanding of our world. Looking out over the ocean toward the horizon, sun, sea, and sky form an endless vista, a never-ending cycle of tide, wind, and waves. Here, far from shore, strange events have unfolded. These stories stretch the boundaries of our imagination and challenge our beliefs. This is a true story of such events from the accounts of the sailors and naval aviators who experienced them. Professional military service members who want the world to know that what they encountered is real. Even more troubling, our military has no explanation. The answers seem to elude everyone, like reflections on the waves, yet they are out there. November 10th, 2004. 90 miles southwest of San Diego, California, in the Naval Operations Area, the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group and her complement of warships and the aircraft of Air Wing 11 are conducting a routine 2-week training exercise. Nearby, the guided missile cruiser USS Princeton has been tracking unknown aircraft that appear and disappear from her sophisticated Aegis radar screens. The Spy-1 Bravo radar is one of the most advanced sensors ever deployed. Princeton's main role is air defense of the strike group, and Operations Specialist Senior Chief Day is in charge of protecting the airspace around the Nimitz.
And my job was to man the radars and ID everything that flew in the skies. And I also sat a position called Anti-Air Warfare Coordinator, where if we ever had to go to war, I was the guy that was going to launch the missiles and kill shit. In addition to that, I was the Air Intercept Controller. When the Super Hornets take off the carrier, I'm the guy that takes control and takes them to the fight and gets them home safe. And there was a lot of experience in that room. The captain had 28 years, I had 18 years. And the Aegis ship is our newest weapon system afloat. It's got the Spy-1 radar system, the phased array radar system, and I was an expert on that.
Inside the Combat Information Center, Chief Day's attention is focused on a group of unknown aircraft on the Spy-1 screen. He's trying to identify them.
I was on watch, and we were probably 100 miles, I forget how far exactly that day we were, off the coast of San Diego Southwest, kind of off the coast of Mexico, Baja. And I started to notice these weird tracks that were popping under my radar coverage right around San Clemente Island. And the reason why I say they were weird is they were appearing in groups of 5 to 10 at a time, and they were pretty closely spaced to each other, and they were 28,000 feet going 100 knots tracking south. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, that's kind of odd. I mean, I don't know anything that flies like that. They weren't on the Comair routes, commercial airline routes. I wasn't really that concerned about them. I didn't consider them hostile for any reason at all. Another watch or two, as I'm watching, the same formation appeared again. And over the course of 3-4 days, probably counted up to that point, groups of 5 to 10 at a time. There were probably 50, 60 tracks by then.
Today, Kevin and Gary are still looking for answers. They've known each other for over a decade since their Navy days. Gary was a third-class petty officer and fire controlman back then.
I worked on the Aegis computer system on a CG-59 guided missile cruiser, the USS Princeton. I'm in charge of CEC and data recording and maintaining and operating all the mainframes that run the system.
They're both becoming increasingly frustrated in their attempts to ID the strange aerial objects, which have no transponders and fit no known flight profiles.
The guys that work on the Spy-1 Bravo radar, they had come across and said they needed to take the system down for recalibration because they were getting clutter or ghost tracks, and they needed to recalibrate to get rid of them. And then once they did finish all that recalibration and bring it back up, the tracks didn't disappear. They were still there, but they were actually sharper and clearer. They were doing a diagnostic test on everything we had to make sure it was not a system malfunction, and it turned out that it wasn't. These were actually real objects. I had the highest spy track quality possible on these contacts. In this situation, I actually started recording on all 4 tapes at the same time. That way, it was a one continuous loop, and I was just replacing them as they were becoming full. We failed utterly to identify these things. It didn't meet any of the parameters for anything that was known.
In some cases, they seem to descend from space and then suddenly plunge to near sea level in seconds. Coupled with the unidentified nature of the craft and lack of clearance, these extreme flight observations are very troubling to the crew assigned to protect the carrier group from aerial threats. Sunday, November 14th, morning. The Nimitz deck crew is busy launching FA-18F Super Hornets, helicopters, and E-2 Hawkeye early warning planes. The mission? Simulated air defense or ADEX training over the Pacific. The winds are calm, the skies are clear, a near-perfect day for flying. As they launch, the Black Aces Squadron has no knowledge of events happening nearby.
In the back of my mind, that's when I determined I was going to become concerned about these objects, is we were getting ready to launch a whole bunch of aircraft in that same piece of sky.
Fast Eagle climbs out to 20,000 feet and heads to the cap station about 40 miles south of the carrier. The cap is a rendezvous point used to form up with the other airplanes. The commander of Fast Eagle has over a decade in the Air Wing. His wingman for the day is a new pilot, a young officer on her first carrier deployment. She's paired with a senior pilot, her backseat weapons system officer for the mission. He will manage navigation and the advanced radar and targeting pods on the aircraft. Overhead, an E-2 Hawkeye from the Wallbanger Squadron is on station directing the aircraft. Banger provides eye-in-the-sky command and control during carrier flight operations. Back in the Combat Information Center on Princeton, the mysterious objects are back. And today is the first time Senior Chief Day has jets in the air that can intercept the mysterious aircraft.
Seeing these contacts, Captain Smith orders me to intercept one of them. So I went back to the console, I picked the closest one that was to us, and I had intended to let the Hawkeye do the intercept because I already had control. It's just easier.
Day briefs the captain, and they agree to send the Hornets. The air intercept controller aboard Princeton, call sign Charlie, radios the Hawkeye and takes control of Fast Eagle.
Banger, Charlie. Charlie's Banger, good. Banger, Charlie. Do you hold unknown air contact? Block 270, 48, 28,000 feet. Bogey. Charlie Banger, negative. Radar picture clean.
The E-2 radar operators have been frustrated in their attempts to get a radar return on the unknown aerial target the Princeton is tracking. Even with their 24-foot radar dish, they can't get a lock on the object.
Banger, Charlie. Transfer Fast Eagle flight to Charlie Control. Button 1-3. We have a real-world tasking for them. Charlie, Banger, roger. Fast Eagle, Charlie. Stand by for real-world tasking. Charlie, Fast Eagle, send it.
We vector more towards that position in the sky, and real quiet on the radio, I'm just giving them bra calls, which is varying range altitude, to these unknown bogey group. And basically, I'm just telling the air crew where the object is, the bearing from them, and the range from them, and the altitude, so they can drive towards it.
Contact, bra 270, 41, 20,000 feet. Bogey, snap, 270, over. Roger, you're 270, 41 miles. 100 on trail. 100, 16. 12,000 pounds. Clean, do you have it? I'm trying to get a track on it now. They said lead 16. The radar picture is clean.
The next radio call takes everyone by surprise.
Fast Eagle 110, say load out.
110, what's your vital slowdown?
I got a tactical action officer, the TAO, jumps on the radio. Her name was Lieutenant Elders, and she just point blank asked the Fast Eagle flight if they were carrying any type of weapons. And there was a stun pause on the radio.
Wings clean, Princeton. We just have GAD train missiles in there, not off the rail.
We're in an exercise environment, and the last thing we wanted to do is start shooting stuff.
Now the controllers have the pilot's undivided attention. Normally, the squadron doesn't carry live ordnance when training.
What do you guys think that was about? What, about the loadout? I have no idea. Maybe it's drug runners or something. Yeah, it could be. Or a lost assassin out of SoCal.
I don't like this.
Fast Eagle Charlie. Contact. Raw. 16034. 8,000 feet. Bogey. Roger, 4 miles, 8,000. Committed. Your call. Continuing.
As Fast Eagle approaches the target, they see nothing unusual. Their onboard radars can't get a lock on the object.
Fast Eagle Charlie. Raw. 16010. 8,000 feet. Roger. Fast Eagle Charlie. First plot.
And basically what the merge plot means on the radar, you got two objects in the same vertical piece of sky, so when I'm looking at the 2D display, it looks like a one radar blob now.
For the object stationary? That is 77. Showing me. Basically nowhere to be on it. Hey, you guys seeing this? What is that?
As the Super Hornets approach the target, they see a disturbance on the ocean surface. It's about the size of a 737, and it looks like something could be just below the surface.
100, take clear, Eagle 24. Roger. Charlie, Fast Eagle. We're observing something in the water here, possibly aircraft in the water, at the first plot. This one's our position about 2 miles. Charlie, Roger. I'm sending the Eagles 14 to take a look.
Do you think that's our unknown?
Not sure. Radar's clean.
As soon as he got to the merge plot position, the object that he was intercepting dropped from 28,000 feet down to 50 feet above the water in 0.78 seconds, as I found out later the next day.
As the Super Hornets get closer to the ocean disturbance, he suddenly spots another craft above it, a much smaller white object with an oblong shape, hovering, then darting just above the waves. The object is moving around erratically, seemingly focused on the white water. The shape is similar to a tic-tac. It's smooth like porcelain. It's not an airplane. Suddenly, the object begins to rise into the air.
Hey, this thing is turned on my nose. Coming up. 2 miles.
The strange craft begins mirroring the turn rate of Fast Eagle.
Bogey, 287. 2 miles. Keep us high.
The object is now at his 3 o'clock position as he continues to turn with it.
We had external communications in the speaker in combat, so everyone could listen to it. And the next thing I hear in the radio going, oh my God, I'm engaged, I'm engaged.
The commander is now about a mile away as he maneuvers his Hornet to get behind the unknown craft. It's about the size of an F-18, about 47 feet long, and it has no wings. As the dogfight unfolds, he quickly turns and dives to bring his jet's nose ahead of the object to close the distance. Suddenly, the tic-tac rockets past. It's gone beyond the horizon in the blink of an eye.
I saw go 137, no tally.
That didn't just happen. Say again. Fast Eagle Charlie, sir. You're not going to believe this, but the bogey group is now back at your cap station.
As Fast Eagle returns to the area of the ocean disturbance, the object is gone, and the sea is once again calm. Soon, they land on the ship. Back on board Banger, the flight crew has been listening to the radio transmissions from Fast Eagle. The crew has been tracking the intercepts on their advanced display systems, called the CEC. One of the radar operators, who wishes to remain anonymous, describes hearing the fear in the pilot's voices, and he knows this is no drill.
I had a good friend who flew on the Hawkeyes. We call him Roger, to protect his identity because he didn't want to come forward at the time, but he wanted to contribute to the story to verify that it actually happened. So there were 5 people in the airplane. Roger would have been sitting in the radar officer seat, which is towards the back middle of the plane. To the side of each one of them or behind him, depending how the chair's rotating, his window.
Suddenly, his attention is drawn to something outside the Hawkeye. He and the entire crew watch in disbelief as a tic-tac object suddenly forms up on their E2 and then just as quickly shoots away from sight. The crew is left in disbelief. As Banger returns to the ship, the crew is shaken. The highly unusual events are troubling, but what happens next has haunted them to this day. U.S. Navy officers quickly arrive and escort the aircrew to a secure space on the ship. As the crewmen begin to take off their flight gear, an officer begins the debriefing by telling them this event did not happen, and they are given non-disclosure agreements to sign. They're warned to never discuss this event again.
Again, we're preparing for the air defense exercise. Now we got all the squadrons launching off carriers. They're all up going to do their functional check flights.
Senior Chief Day watched in disbelief as the tic-tac UFOs reacted to the incoming fighter jets.
All the objects in the sky, they all dropped out of the sky, from 28,000 feet down to 50 feet.
Based on the Spy-1 Bravo radar system, the object descended at over 24,000 miles an hour.
It was unbelievable, because normally what would happen if a normal aircraft did that? First of all, it would fly apart. It wouldn't be able to withstand the G-forces, and there would be multiple sonic booms. It would be boom, 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 and this did not make any sonic booms.
From what I observed, I saw that it went from right around between 25 and 30,000 feet down to sea level and below sea level.
Contact tag number 042.
Below sea level was confirmed to me by the actual sonar techs that were in combat in communications with other techs that had said they had an active track on it under the water. They're talking with their sonar guys on the sub that was with us, and I mean, I was told directly that it did go underwater. It went from being in the air to underwater. From what they were saying, they would go averaging about 500 knots under the water. So it did slow down when it hit the water, but it didn't affect it inertially.
After the intercepts, both Kevin and Gary climbed up to the ship's bridge wing to get a better view of the objects through the binoculars.
We go up to the bridge wing and look at them through the big eyes, which is a heavily magnified binoculars that are out on the bridge wing of the ship.
Even when I was off watch, I was usually up in combat anyway. And I was sitting at the console, I just picked the closest object to us, and I got the relative bearing from the ship, slave over to the relative bearing about the right altitude, and saw this white light in the sky.
The movements were smooth to erratic. They just moved from one point to another. It was always a very sharp and clean movement. It always felt like a constant speed, not like speeding up. Just it needed to go to that point, and it decided to do it at this speed. And then it would just go from nothing to the speed they were going to go, and then stop at the next point.
Meanwhile, back on the Nimitz, aviation tech Patrick Hughes is working to secure the classified data recorders from the Hawkeye that encountered the Tic Tac.
We pull out their hard drives, we call them RMCs, we call them bricks because they physically heavy like brick. But they contain the software to run the airplane. They also record a lot of the data that the aircrew sees during flight. So we take the removable stuff, we take it out, we go downstairs, back to our shop.
Patrick's job involves tracking the chain of custody of the hard drives.
Then we open up the safe, put them in the safe, we've got tracking sheets so we know what RMCs are on what airplane. We know who signed them out, who put them in the airplane, who took them out of the airplane.
As he gets ready to wrap up the mission, there's a knock on the door.
Our commanding officers there, two other guys in flight suits, I'm assuming were Air Force officers, because pretty sure that's the insignia they had on, but they were not on the ship earlier. I did not see them come on the ship, so I'm not sure how they got there. But the skipper basically said, I need the bricks off the flight. We opened the safe, we put them in bags. He took them, he took his two anonymous officers, and left.
The officers, with the classified hard drives in hand, soon board an HS-60 Seahawk helicopter and leave Nimitz. Soon thereafter, Petty Officer Voorhees has his own visit by unknown officials on the Princeton.
Once they landed and everybody got off, then about maybe 20 minutes later, I got called in to have all my data recording tapes turned over. And then I also told that I needed to reload CEC because it had been wiped. So it was, so I turned over all the tapes, and then they also said if there's any even blank tapes to erase anything else that's in the shop. Well, they were plainclothes people that came aboard on the helicopter. It was my chain of command that took control of the tapes from me. The helo left with them after that, so because we went right back to flight ops.
The link between the Tic Tacs and these men is unknown. How they became aware of the UFO encounters and how they arrived so quickly on board after the event is also a mystery. The video you are now watching is the actual gun camera FLIR footage of the Tic Tac taken by a later flight. This is the first video ever released by the U.S. government showing military planes engaging UFOs. The advanced targeting pod, known as FLIR, works in both TV mode and infrared mode. The film reveals no control surfaces, no exhaust plume, a uniform heat signature, and no visible means of propulsion. Gary and his shipmates saw the FLIR film on their consoles and on the secret LAN aboard the Princeton.
It was a much clearer video. You could see the shape of the ship. You could see it, moving. I tried to go and get a disc to come make a copy of it, and by the time I got back, it was already off of our hard drive, off the secret LAN. No access to it whatsoever.
Petty Officer Jason Turner also saw a much higher resolution version of the FLIR film showing strange appendages extending from the object.
But it did have some protruding at the bottom of it. I couldn't tell if they were curled back or straight down.
Jason says the video was approximately 10 minutes in length and much longer than the video that has been released.
I saw this video playing, and I'd ask him, is this what we're training, or what's part of this training that we're going through? And he said, no, this is real life. And when I saw it, it was a very clear image, a very clear video, and this thing was going berserk, like making turns, like, it's incredible. The amount of G-forces that it would put on a human that this thing was doing. The jets were like trying to trail this thing, and it would just run off and leave. It would just gone, and then it would come back, and then you would see it. And then it made a maneuver, like they were chasing it straight on. It was going with them. This thing stopped, turned, and just gone. I mean, that's the only way to describe what it looked like.
This is fucking drama, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look at me, I say. My God.
Just 11 years later, fighter jets from USS Roosevelt filmed this anomalous object in 2015. Like the Nimitz encounter, they too were conducting routine training when fleets of UFOs were encountered by the pilots. The Nimitz encounters remained cloaked secrecy for over 13 years. The first-hand testimony about UFO sightings is practically unheard of for military service members. Thanks to the brave and honest accounts of the sailors and naval aviators who have come forward to relate their experiences, and of the remarkable videos they filmed that day, the silence has been broken.
I dealt with this all on my own for many, many years, and it was not a very pleasant journey to go through, because no one really believes you. But now, things have changed, and anyone out there that's struggling with this and wants to reach out, there is now a group that you can reach out to and get help and support and vindication.
It's honestly been a little relieving to be able to actually talk about it and how important that event really was, and not just keep blowing it off. There's people out here that really need to know and want to know, and you have the support of me and Kevin and my other shipmates that have come forward and decided to talk about it.
My role is to describe the story and convince people that yes, this event really happened and these objects were really real, but what they are, I have no idea.
It is something. I want to know what it is. That's the whole reason I chose to come forward to contribute to the story, because there is a story here. There is more information here. The more of us that talk about it, the better chance of the full story coming together. And it's vindication for us that other people are looking into it, and we finally tell our story and people listen.
If you need to get a hold of us or would like to talk to any of us, Kevin, me, or any of the other guys that have come forward, there'll be an email address at the end of this video that you can contact them and they can get a hold of us.
If you or someone you know has witnessed unknown objects from military ships or planes, please contact us at the address on your screen. You can remain anonymous. As we strive to understand these encounters and come to terms with what they mean, there's something far beyond the horizon and the limits of our comprehension waiting for all of us.
This is Dave Beatty, and I'm talking to a Navy veteran named Ryan Weigelt. And Ryan contacted me via email, basically after seeing the film The Nimitz Encounters. And at the end of that movie, I asked people if they've had any experience or having knowledge of these events to contact us. So Ryan reached out to me. So hey, thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
No, it's not a problem, Dave. Glad we can get in contact with each other.
Yeah, Ryan explained to me that he worked on the air detachment on the USS Princeton back in 2004 when these events happened off the coast of San Diego, California. And he said that the air detachment basically are the helicopters that are assigned to the cruiser. So Ryan, maybe you can just tell people a little bit about your Navy job and what your rank was, what you did with the helicopters back at that time.
During this time, Dave, I was a leading petty officer, and I was going out training a couple of detachments to go out to sea. Our command, HSL 43, they did not have enough trained up detachments to go out to sea, so I got tasked with training all of these guys out there during this time frame. Basically, I'm a power plant specialist. I worked on the power plant systems of the helicopters, but I also was in charge of training whole detachments up to go out to sea.
So you said you were like a lead petty officer. Is that your rank, or how does that work?
It was just like a job title. My rank was E6.
Okay, so in your capacity there with those helicopters, how many people did you oversee? And I mean, was it sort of like you were in a supervisor position?
Yes, I was. I was supervising everybody on this detachment at the time. A typical detachment, depending on how many helicopters you have, if you have one or two, can range anywhere from 8 personnel to 16. This time we had 2 helicopters, so there was at least 16. I think there might have actually been 20 guys out there at this time because of all the training that was going on, but I can't really recollect for sure.
With your detachment, which was called HSL 43, which I guess stands for Light Helicopter Anti-Submarine, are you permanently on the Princeton, or is it sort of like you're assigned to it?
No, we get temporarily assigned to a ship for small cruises. So when they get to do their workouts, the ship, they have to go out with the helicopters. So we'll get assigned from our command over there. So we were Detachment 5 at the time. This was a Detachment 5.
And then there's other, like for instance, on USS Nimitz, there would be another detachment, perhaps a different squadron, perhaps that are assigned.
Yeah, that would be a different HS command would be out there. It's changed today. Now it's the way they're doing things today is completely different. But
I read that. Yeah, they changed. It's like Marine Strike Squadron or helicopter.
Yeah, they've changed them to HSMs, and they supply the whole battle group. So it used to be the HS would supply the carrier, the HSL would do the small ships.
Right.
But now an HSM command just does the whole battle group.
So can you describe what the helicopters did? I know they do search and rescue, but what was sort of your guys' mission?
We do everything from anti-submarine to data link, extending the ship's radar. We've got the whole battle group, so we can link in with the whole battle group, through our data link systems as well. But
and
I don't remember, we were just doing, I would guess, anti-submarine warfare exercises because we were doing a workup. It was the last workup before the long cruise.
So you guys sort of protect the battle group.
We protect the carrier. Everybody protects the carrier out there, basically.
And from what I read, on the internet, it looked like these helicopters had the capability of, pretty sophisticated radar system and a forward-looking infrared system. And some of them, I guess it was called the LAMP system. They had detectors, I guess, that were used to detect submarines, right? Magnetic anomaly detectors. And So, and then of course, it was offensive weaponry that these helicopters could use to, for instance, in a wartime theater to attack enemy subs or ships and things. On Princeton, there would have been 2 helicopters, right?
Yes, we had 2 helicopters out there during this time.
And with your crews, basically, you explained you really can't launch 2 helicopters at once because there's not enough space on a cruiser. So there's a hangar bay and kind of move them in and out of these 2 hangars. Is that right?
Yes, or actually it's one hangar. Sorry, I'm getting my ships confused. It's one hangar, and it opens up. You've got 2 aircraft side by side, window packed into the barn, and then they pull back to the same track. So there's 2 different. They're called recovery assist superior traverse devices that move them in and out of the hangar.
Well, I mean, can you take me through kind of like what a typical day, not with UFOs, but just a typical